Hey guys, this is the second episode of the podcast on the porch. We're all here again. It's been 1 week later, and we're going to go around the table again and say our names just so you can make sure you know who's who again. I'm Ryan Sear.
Jonathan Plord.
Craig Sear.
Joe Shiggis.
I'm John Shaw.
Alright, so John's had a pretty busy week. I think we all have. So I think he's got some stories for us.
So right before recording this podcast, I was at work. One of my assignments while at work was to move a 55-gallon drum of soap. That weighs about 520 pounds, which is a lot.
That's a heavy boy.
A heavy boy indeed. So, and at this point, I was the only one working. My boss had already left for the day. So I had to essentially do this on my own. At first I was given two options. Either I can figure out some way of moving the barrel, these 30-ish feet, or I could pump all the soap out of the barrel, dump it into 5-gallon buckets, and walk it the distance, and just walk back and forth over and over again with these 5-gallon buckets until the barrel was light enough to push.
How long do you think? Yeah, how long would that take in comparison to what?
With the pump that we have, we've got a small electric pump that works relatively well. It can fill a 5-gallon bucket in like 2 minutes. But that only reaches about a foot
It's
down.
not very fast.
No, it's not. But I mean, it's better than the hand pump, which is way slower and also requires me to pump up and down for an hour. And I was not about to do that. And I figured it would be way easier, even if I could only move it a few inches at a time. Mm-hmm. It would be way faster to just try and push it than to fill buckets and then walk them over and then dump them into another barrel and then walk it back and fill the bucket, dump it. It was just, that was too much hassle. I couldn't.
You're not going to do that.
No way, Jose.
You couldn't
do your job.
You couldn't tip it over on its side and just roll it.
Well, so when I was first trying to move it, it was in a little closet in one of the automatic car washes. So I kind of like crouched down and I put my feet against the wall behind me and pushed near the bottom. And I got it to slide a little, and so I kept doing that. After like 10 minutes of pushing, I got it out the door. And so now I was in the clear.
Much quicker.
So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, now I've got more options because I actually have room to move around it. So I can keep trying to push it, or I can try and wrap some rope around it and pull it or something.
Huff it.
Yeah, or I could huff it. That's actually not... It's not great. It doesn't give you anything.
Could just build a giant bubble and
No,
transfer
I'm not.
it that way. Soap's good
true.
at that.
I don't mean breathing it in as like a drug. I mean huffing it and moving it, like brute force. Yeah.
Well, huffing it as a drug didn't work either.
Soapy water, I don't know why you want to breathe that in.
Hey, you never know.
Until you try.
That's good.
So, one thought that crossed my mind when I was trying to figure out what to do was to tip it over, and I would just set it on its side and roll it, because then I could just get it over there. But then I was like, I realized I'd have to pick it back up once I got it to where I wanted it.
Mm.
And that would be picking up a lot of weight, and I'm not Mr. Strongman or anything. So
Why not?
I
I
need some work.
It was specified it had to be standing up when it got to the destination?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we had to access the soap. So I decided to try tipping it on one of its edges so that I could roll it that way. And that worked for a while. I got most of the way there. And then, since this is in one of the automatic car washes, there's some soap on the ground just from the wash running.
Yep.
And it was a little slippery. I slipped just enough that the center of mass went too far over and I couldn't keep it up.
Uh-oh.
So I got it to the ground relatively gently, so it didn't explode or anything. And then I rolled the rest of the way, because I might as well at this point. And then I spent about half an hour trying to figure out how to get it back up. On the top of the barrel where you get the soap out, there's 2 holes, one on each side, so that you can access it from either side. Unfortunately, since the barrel was full, the soap levels were up to one of the holes, so I had to figure out some way of getting some soap out so I could actually lift it without dumping 5-10 gallons of soap all over the place, because this stuff is relatively expensive because it's concentrated. So that could have been like $100 mistake right there, and I wasn't about to do that.
Another Chinese food episode, dude.
What on this?
We'll tell that one after.
So I'm trying to think of some way to do this. I figure the only way I can pick it up is if I can somehow prop it up on something so that the soap level is low enough, and then maybe I can get a siphon going, or I can just pump the soap out into barrels until it's light enough that I can lift it up. But this is still a 500-something pound barrel, and it's not easy to lift even a little bit to try and slide something underneath. Finally, I got a pry bar, a big metal pry bar, and I balanced that on top of a hand truck because that was what I had. And then I rolled the barrel up the pry bar because it was at a slight angle now. And when I got it high enough, I slid a wood block underneath, and I lowered it down to the wood block, and then it rested there, and it was just high enough that I could open it without spilling soap. So then it came the task of getting the soap out. I was hoping I could just make a siphon or something so it would do it by itself and I could go do something else while it went.
Come back and the soap's like all over out.
Got it.
All that work for nothing.
Unfortunately, all the tubing we had was relatively small, but I figured it would work anyways. So I'm working on setting this up, and everything's starting to get covered in soap. What I learned later on is that this stuff is extremely basic.
As all soap is.
and it has warning labels all over the barrel. It's like wear eye protection and gloves and everything while handling. I didn't.
Oh my god!
So I got the.
You really don't.
It's too much effort.
That is a classic grunt work for the business move right there.
Yeah.
Just tossing whoever does the nastiest trash straight into the filth and not giving them any sort of protection.
Exactly.
I've been there.
Yeah, Craig, you know that. Huh?
It's good stuff. It's how it's supposed to be. Anyways, I'm trying to set up this siphon, and part of that involves sucking on the end of the tube while the other end is.
So you tried huffing it after.
Eye protection, gloves, and you're gonna put in your mouth. Okay, we're thinking here. This is good.
I was desperate. Okay.
It didn't say anything about mouth protection.
That's true. It didn't. I think it did say something about
Don't ingest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those warnings are they're hyped up.
They do it with gasoline and stuff in the movies, so it's fine.
It's okay. It's okay.
So I was sucking through this tube, and I got it going, but then one of the ends of the tube came out, and so it got some air bubbles, and then the siphon stopped. So at this point, the whole tube's covered in soap. And the inside of the tube is also filled with a lot of soap, but not enough. So I take the tube and I put it in my mouth without thinking too much about it, and instantly regret it. It's so bitter and disgusting, and I start spitting it out. So I wipe it all down, and I.
Go in for round 2.
Yeah. Take 2, and it's
the appropriate response.
I go in for a second go, and it's still pretty bad, but I don't care enough anymore.
You toughed it out.
And so I blow it out so that I'm starting fresh, and I start sucking in. Unfortunately, it created some little bubbles and stuff, and I got some soap in my mouth, and it was a little...
Next thing you know, round 3. Here we go.
Yeah, well,
time.
Moral of the story, I kept going, I kept trying, and I couldn't get it going.
You gotta persist. That's what you
Finally, I was like, the problem is I couldn't get enough soap high enough up. So I'm like, you know what? Get a little in my mouth, so what? At least I'll have the tube filled. So I get a little in my mouth, and I quickly dump the tube, and it starts working again, and then it stops almost immediately. But then I spit it out really quickly, and it was too
There's
long.
blood in your spit.
Well, no, the soap was red, so I wouldn't do it.
And that's when John figured out he could transfer it using it now.
Yeah, so the rest of the time I use the straw. Suck, spit, suck. No,
500 calories.
You can no longer taste anything.
So after that, my hands were covered and my mouth started tingling, and I was like, okay, let's go wash off before I take a new attempt. So I washed everything
It's
off.
like radiation. You gotta like take it in small doses, or it will actually.
He uses soap to wash the soap.
Well, I washed my hands off, and I gargle some water and stuff and spit it out. My mouth is actually still tingling like 5 hours later, which is probably not great, but
So you start tweaking out in a
And
second.
and then my hands were covered in chemical burns and stuff, which was kind of cool.
Let me see.
I wore them all off. I wore all the skin off.
Wasn't this just...
Yeah, but like it'll
No,
erode
but-
like the first layer. Of your
Oh.
skin.
Yeah,
It's
and
not,
then
like,
and
the
then it's
worst.
loose, so it comes off a lot easier. So like in the process of lifting the barrel and lifting a bunch of other stuff and working with my hands, I wore it all off. So finally I get out the pump and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to do it this way. So I start pumping and I'm going and I get it
the hard
far-
way, the pump.
Yeah,
right.
As opposed to his mouth.
So I get it light enough that I can stand it up. I slide it in, and at that point I'm done. I'm not gonna transfer anymore. So I just lock it up and I go on with my day. My tingly mouth and all.
By that time,
So-
the day was gone. The day was over.
How long did that whole ordeal take?
Almost 3 hours.
Oh my god.
3 hours.
Boss is like, hey, John, move this soap.
I'm really
3
glad my
hours
boss
later,
wasn't
there
there because I had the car wash closed. I had that automatic bay closed down the entire time, and that's not ideal.
Yeah.
A nice even speed of 10 feet per hour.
Yeah.
Hey, John, we did way less business yesterday.
Everything go well with that soap?
Alright, John, one question for you.
I got one answer for you.
I hope so. What did the employees in the past do
Yeah, right.
While you're sucking soap out of
This
a
is
giant
normally get
barrel.
done.
to rectify your issue?
So, I think they just use the pump. And
Is
just-
that
Standard
usually
course of action.
less than
But-
a 3 hour operation with the pump?
but I figured I could probably figure out a
Well,
way
now that
of
you got all the
getting
kinks
this
out,
over.
next time you gotta move the soap.
Oh, it's gonna be a breeze. No,
First
honestly-
time when he's sucking the tube.
It'll be a
Exactly.
basic breeze.
Hey,
There you go.
No, I mean now my mouth is already numb to it, so like it can't hurt me anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Chemical
that's how it
burns
works.
in your mouth.
There you go.
At
Tongue's
least I didn't
peeling.
swallow it.
Yeah.
At least you didn't swallow it. Maybe if you swallowed it, you could have been soap man.
Wash your
The super
wash
basic
your
hero.
stomach out.
Alright,
What else?
so you want to hear the
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the Chinese food story?
Oh
No.
no!
Oh
This is
my
new
god.
to me.
Craig, you gotta tell it because you were the closest and you're not John.
So, me,
Uh,
Ryan, and John, all worked at a baseball stadium, and basically our job was to cater to the baseball players. And this was what
Last
is
summer.
like the ranking of these players?
double A?
Yeah, these guys were
Double
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 A.
A team.
So-
So like the Hartford Yard Goats, that league. Eastern League, Double A baseball.
Any of like the players that had the opportunity to get drafted.
It's the step above or step right below the.
Yeah,
major
so
leagues.
all these players have the opportunity to be drafted into the major leagues.
So you met with Red Sox and Yankees players?
Oh yeah,
Occasionally,
we did their laundry. It was great.
No,
Yeah.
I
I still
have- what's
they
his
were
name's
they were
on here on my
actual
car?
Red Sox
Ellsbury?
players.
I still have Jacoby Ellsbury's boxers.
Occasionally,
in my
we
car.
would have like a major league player stop by to see like the minor league game.
And sometimes they were injured or something. They
Yeah,
were
when
down
they
a
were
concussion,
down on,
so they'd
like,
come down and just
So when they were, when they get injured, they would come down.
So basically, every night we would supply the teams with some type of meal, as well as doing their laundry and just other things in general. And one of the nights that we were doing it, we had ordered the Chinese food, which is it's a pretty popular food choice for the players. And so I believe how it went was me and John, we took the food cart up the elevator onto the sidewalk, the street of Hartford, and
What a great place to be with Chinese food.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And-
So can I jump in for a minute?
yeah, sure.
So who went to go pick it up that day? It wasn't me.
It had to be Marvin.
No, it was me.
John.
Oh, no, it was
that was
John,
right,
that's
dude.
right.
All right, so John.
I drove 15 minutes to the Chinese place, picked up the food, drove back.
And he met me.
Yeah,
with-
and I was
with
up there
the
too.
food
So I think we were like late for whatever reason. Like the game was
Probably.
ending quicker than we thought. So we were like trying to rush to do this, right? So we were trying to get the Chinese food out of Marvin's like SUV thing onto this little wheelie cart, so we can take it down the elevator and downstairs.
Right.
It's like 5 things of food. So it's like 2 General Tso like trays,
Just
and like
huge trays.
two rice trays and like other stuff because it's for both teams.
Like if you're at a buffet or something,
Yeah.
those size
Exactly.
of trays.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Big.
Chinese
So a
food
whole
catering.
tray, yeah,
Very
basically.
large, yeah.
So a lot of times they're like kind of flimsier than they should be
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
they just
they're-
dump like ridiculous amounts of foods in these. And so I was like a little bit farther away watching the guys move it, and I think I was like trying to bum away some people who were like, I wanted a clear path because you got to kind of take it down this hill,
Right.
and we wanted to move fast. So Craig and John are unloading the Chinese food.
Yeah, so I think I had put like maybe 1 or 2 trays on, and maybe John had put 1 on at the time, and I turn around, and here's John. What tray of it was it?
It was one of the chicken.
I think it was one of the General Tso's
Yeah, I
chicken.
think it was
So
the
we could have
General
done
Tso.
without like a rice or something.
Yeah,
Like,
a rice
chicken
wouldn't have been a
important.
big hit, but this was the General Tso tray.
Main course.
Yeah,
Biggest
and
dish.
and so I turn around and I see John with it, and right as I'm heading towards the
Boom.
car to get one of the last trays, toe strikes the curb and down he goes,
No.
tray in hands.
No tip
and,
for
It's
you.
like a particularly high curve. Like
and yeah,
everybody
this is-
knows to pay like special
When
attention
you-
to this curve because it's not the rest.
Well,
like, same
and
height as a
honestly,
normal
when you
curve.
walk on the streets, you know you're about to step up a curve. It's second nature. You just
Yeah,
take
he
the
wasn't
step.
thinking about it. We were rushing.
This, when you do your second nature step up,
Yeah.
you trip. And so, yeah, down he goes, tray in hand, food all over the sidewalk. And, you know, obviously this is causing commotion. I think one of the security officers,
One of the cops who was out
Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's like cops on all the corners of the
he
streets.
comes over and he's just kind of like observing at this point while me and John like are trying to freaking scrape the chicken. And,
Was
and
Marv
food.
there at that point?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
he like watched it happen.
And-
too.
That's good.
So we're trying to like salvage as much as we can what was left in the tray.
What do you mean?
Like, because you dumped it, but it wasn't like a
Yeah,
full.
not
Oh,
everything,
so you can
yeah.
still...
Yeah.
So, like,
I
I'm
thought you were scooping it off the
I was
sidewalk.
like, guys,
and putting
these
it
are
back
important
in.
people you're feeding.
They're not gonna know.
So we're trying to make sure we got to keep
What
what,
was
we
still
still
in it,
had. And then we had to clean up what was on the sidewalk. And these the cops were always really picky about parking along that street because it was always really busy with the games going on. And he's observing and he's like, "You got to move this car. It can't stay
He's,
here."
he's
And I'm
getting
like,
honest
Not
about
that
the
it really
car.
does need to move. Like,
You didn't register
nobody
the chicken.
there. the player buses are probably going to show up in 20 minutes or something. And even then, they don't really need to be there until the players are coming out, which is 20, 30 minutes after the game, earliest.
Yeah.
There was no reason for me to need to move, but he was insistent that I needed to move the car. So I'm like, we're going to need new food anyways, aren't we? Because we're now down half a tray of the main course.
And meantime, just random people walking by in the street. I specifically remember one guy saying to me, he points down at the food on the sidewalk, not what we had left in the tray, points down at it, and he goes, "Damn, I wish I could eat some of
that." No, that's good.
I was just kind of, obviously,
hey, it's right there,
dude,
brother.
Offset by that.
There was good food on top of the food touching the paper.
That's fair.
Like, if you were hungry enough, you could have made it
right there, brother.
Those homeless guys, they would have loved that. Then eventually the cop got persistent enough, and we needed new food, so I sped on over, got a new tray, and this time managed not to spill it. Incredibly.
Spills it again.
We've had other spill
something
episodes.
else.
Yeah, we've had other spill episodes, but none of those were as bad.
Here's what I want to
know.
Alfredo.
Oh, no. How long does it take for these trays to be prepared? Like, you order Chinese, they have it ready for
they're grinding out. They have a...
Yeah, it didn't take very long, and we called as soon as...
We knew it was...
as soon as I left, we called and we're like, hey, we're going to pick up another one.
It was about as long as the drive.
It took maybe 5 minutes once I was there. I got the food and I went.
And
probably one of Marvin's biggest face palms, amongst many others, though.
Yeah.
Definitely not the biggest, though.
The biggest face palm.
The dude's face palm.
Oh, can't even. Don't bring that up.
Well, we'll have to disclose that.
We'll never talk
time.
about that.
We'll talk about it when Ryan's not here.
All right, guys. So we're gonna do a shorter episode for this because we've got some other stuff to do. We've got stuff planned for next week, and we might do some more recording after this. But that's it for this episode of the podcast on the porch. We're gonna go one time around and say our names. Ryan Sear,
Jonathan Plord,
Craig Sear,
Joe Shigas,
John.
Oh, there we go.
Wow. Let's try that again. Sorry.
All the way
around.
My name.
Right?
No.
Ryan Sear,
Jonathan Plord,
Craig Sear,
Joe Shigas,
John Shaw.
There it is.
Nailed it.
All right. Good night, guys.
Thank you.